I regard myself sometimes as the reverse of a blow-in. So I'm a kind of blowout. So I grew up in Enniskillen, in a small housing estate just outside the town. And I moved out into the countryside when I was 11 after my grandmother died, and we inherited her rambly farmstead. But apart from frequent visits back home, as I say, frequently to irritate my wife, who's from Oxford, I'm established now, I guess, professionally and certainly personally, in the sense that I've got two grown-up kids who are pure Devonian in the southwest of England. I mean, you see that the contrast between your world and your milieu when you were growing up. And in many respects, actually, and I'm sure you'll get this, I had a very idyllic upbringing with the backdrop of this appalling, murderous conflict going on. And the two things were very incongruous. I suppose the concept of the terrible beauty was very alive to me, growing up in a place with such staggering natural beauty, where there was such cruel and intimate destruction done neighbour to neighbour, and that has a lasting effect. How could it not, really? And I saw that sometimes in the experience of my English friends when I brought them back to my home, which obviously I did that because I was at university from '86 to '89. So bringing people, including girlfriends, from England back home was an interesting experience, because it was fairly mind blowing for them. And of course, I was at university when the Enniskillen bomb happened, and came home during that. So my friends still, some of them still contact me on the Remembrance Sunday, or on or about it, to see how I'm doing, because they remember the impact it had on me. So growing up growing up in Northern Ireland was certainly different, and I'm sure it's had an impact in the way I sort of I perceive life, and perhaps my professional path that I've taken since. To get everybody talking about the inevitability of a united Ireland, which is an entirely bogus and dishonest attempt at conversations. Is absolutely hilarious. It's an echo chamber, basically. Well, I think Martin is different. Martin resisted the calls from constitutional nationalism and republicanism in the north to focus on Irish unity, and instead, as you know, he talked about a shared island unit, and we are a shared island. And I think unionism and reaching out and doing business with somebody like Micheál Martin demonstrates a confidence that is desperately needed, and is very attractive, actually, as well, to huge swathes of liberal unionism that have drifted off, I think temporarily, frankly, into the orbit of alliance. And lots of people say to me from this side of the ditch, oh, but clearly there's going to be United Ireland. You only have to look at the Brexit result, with Northern Ireland being Remain. And I'm saying you really are clutching at straws here, because that is entirely different to the constitutional question. I voted Remain because I work in Europe and I feel European, and I absolutely knew it would damage the fabric of the United Kingdom if we voted to leave. And I think that's being played out. But I'm a reconciled Democrat. That's democracy, and we have to live with it. But it will damage the constitutional position of Northern Ireland. And so, therefore, it is incumbent on unionism to do a huge job of selling the idea, which is going to be very hard, since we don't know what Brexit is going to deliver in terms of political insecurity. I think there is a seam that needs to be mined by unionism to say, actually, we've now got the best of both worlds. Given our unique position, we can trade easily with Europe, and we can trade into the United Kingdom. We ought to be a place that's extremely attractive for inward investment from GB. But if I was looking at it from a constitutional nationalist point of view in Northern Ireland, I would absolutely be thinking, if we want unification, what we have to do first of all is make Northern Ireland work. We cannot have a system, or we cannot have an outcome, because we obviously can have a system that is 50% plus one, as you know, in terms of a border unity poll, but we can't have an outcome that is a secessionist perhaps violent minority now in the northeast of the island, who are radicalized and mobilized against having their constitutional preference annihilated. I mean, obviously, with Northern Ireland, the Belfast Agreement, it has many defects, but one of its geniuses was to allow people to hold diverse identities. Mm-hmm. And I think, looking at my own situation, you were asking me about this. Certainly, since the Belfast Agreement, I have felt able to express and articulate my Irishness as well as my Britishness. And that's been a huge gift to me. And that doesn't make me any less a unionist. It allows me to kind of accept and embrace those aspects of my cultural heritage that are common to all Irish people. And I think that's a rare and precious thing. Unfortunately, the resurgence of the nativist bigotry of Sinn Féin means that I feel less Irish, ironically, than I did, and more British. And that's a function of the dishonesty and the mendacity of their approach. But again, if I was a constitutional nationalist, I would be saying, let's put any talk of a unity poll, because clearly I think that they would not win it. But let's put all talk of that out of the way and let us concentrate on making Northern Ireland work. And of course, that's antithetical to Sinn Féin's clear objective, which is to not make Northern Ireland work. Because what benefit or interest would they have in making the institutions work? And that doesn't, by the way, excuse the culpability of the DUP for collapsing institutions and resisting their reconstitution and all the rest of it. But it's very difficult, I think, to see Sinn Féin ever embracing that position. Talk about the place in ways that may have been relevant 40 years ago, but bear no relationship to the lived experience of most people who get up in the morning and want a functioning economy, a health service that will look after them, and a good environment to bring their children up in. And people still come to Northern Ireland to settle there precisely for those reasons, and including educational attainment, achievement, and so on. It is an amazing place to be, an amazing place to live, and we mustn't let this narrative of a sort of squalid sectarian Bantustan survive, because it bears no relationship to reality. And I think that's one of the strongest cards that unionism has to play. The sort of Think 32 side, the unity side, has to relentlessly tell everybody here, everybody in Northern Ireland, how awful life is, and it simply doesn't relate to reality at all. So they'll have they've got a big challenge there. Equally, challenge of the pro-union message is to say to people who probably don't think about this very much at all. I mean, there's another issue, Henry, isn't it? When people are surveyed about what matters to them in Northern Ireland, only a tiny percentage would rate the constitutional question as a priority.
Health is number one consistently. Health and education are 1 and 2.
Sure. Yeah. So this idea that everybody back over home is waking up in the morning and thinking, how can I advance unity, is bizarre. Yet it has to be. I mean, the agitation has to continue. And I find it deeply depressing that that's all they've got, plus the kind of O-level economic analysis that Sinn Féin have produced, that says that, unification will be basically a land of milk and honey, and the money will come from somewhere to assimilate 1.6 million people, including 900,000 who possibly don't want to be there. But everything will be fine, and probably the British government will keep paying for a long time because they've got a moral obligation to do so. It is fantasy economics. It's fantasy constitutional politics as well. I am hopeful about the future. There is a very strong obligation on the people who've made it out of Northern Ireland to continue to help it thrive. And those people don't have to have any particular constitutional position. But when you look at some of the real ills, let's park the constitutional question and talk about educational attainment for Protestant kids in Belfast, for example, which is on the floor. Why aren't people who've come from that environment not now volunteering, and I include myself in this, volunteering some of their time to put something back? We come from an amazing place. for all the horror that I endured growing up, that's completely overwhelmed with memories of just what a lovely place it is and what lovely people, what lovely folk I came from. So I have a moral obligation, I think, to put something back, as do the tens of thousands of other people who've made a success of their lives, who've come from Northern Ireland, who are living in GB in England, Wales and Scotland, to try to put something back as well. And I think we probably all agree, no matter what our constitutional preference is, that that wouldn't be a bad idea, would it?